So for everybody at home who is watching the live stream, I hope you're still with us. We decided to take everyone for a run. We heard that there were a few marathon runners here. I heard earlier people saying I did the New York Marathon and the London Marathon. So to get everybody into the spirit of being energized for this session, we got everyone out in the fresh air. The clicker's not working, Leon. Yes, it is working. And your first test was to see whether you could find the fire escape. And I am very pleased as an MBA director to say that everybody has managed to pass that test very successfully. There's nobody frazzled to a crisp in the room. So thank you and everybody. And hopefully you did get to see where the toilets were located. They're out here on the left, and they're also round by MBA base. So as you can see from this slide, we didn't want this session to begin in a usual MBA habitat. For those of you who've worked your way through the programme and are with us as alumni, and for those of you on the programme now, you know that this is very unusual space for us. We're normally in workshop-based spaces with tables around, we could be doing anything from having a discussion to something very active or even being in a computer room. So this is an unusual space for us. We will be going back to our home, which is MG38, the MBA base, where I think a banquet awaits us at the end, and we've got lots of nice sort of drinks and nibbles to enjoy. Is that right, Bav? It is a banquet. We were promised by Vicky Harmer in a previous MBA Tuesday of a smorgasbord, but I don't know if we've stretched quite that far. We are tweeting, and we are encouraging you to tweet. If you can't remember our Twitter details, then you do have some pencils along the ends of the aisle, so please feel free to take those, and you are very welcome to tweet throughout. For anybody who is still with us and they've managed to stay with us for the live feed, then if you tweet questions, we'll be able to collect those from Jenny at the end, and you also have the opportunity to join with us and ask questions, pose questions to Malcolm. So, just as we usually begin with every MBA Tuesday, it's not usually quite so dramatic, but we begin every Tuesday club with a sort of usually a welcome and a bit of a recap. It's been a while since our last MBA Tuesday club. We've had the summer break, and a lot's happened in that time. First of all, we have to welcome our new dean, Professor Malcolm Kirkup, who, as an MBA director, I'm delighted to have a dean with such an MBA heritage joining us. And for those of you that have looked at Malcolm's background and profile, you know that he's had a number of MBA programs that have become huge successes under his watch. So I don't think we could ask for any more as an MBA community from our incoming dean. And of course, you get to hear from Malcolm throughout the rest of the presentation today, the session. I also do want to just highlight that we've got some new MBA team members as well. So unfortunately, David Chalcroft has moved on, and he's now in Bedfordshire, and Andy Peasley is now going to be moving on to Falmouth to live the life of Cornish bliss with the University of Falmouth. But we're delighted to be joined by Nodus and Angie, who have joined Nodus has joined a number of modules, and Angie's working with us on MBA Compass. Nodus is working mostly on leadership and leading and managing people and consultancy skills. So for those of you who are new to the programme, you'll get to meet him a little bit in MBA Compass, but that's not the only time you'll see him. And of course, we've got new faces in the room, and it's really nice to see that most of you have returned back after our little jaunt down Marylebone Road. So welcome. I think September's always quite, and October and the start of semester is always quite a nice time to have something fresh and new happening. And this semester, we've decided to make a few changes and open up a little bit more to our wider community. So we know that MBA Tuesdays are always popular. We know a number of our alumni come along. But we also know from feedback that a lot of you have said you'd love to come and be more involved with the everyday workings of the MBA. So we have arranged for a middle of the month munch, I like to refer to it, but that doesn't look professional enough on the slide. But the Friday sessions that are in the middle of the month, we will be having a networking lunch, and that's for MBA studying participants, it's for MBA faculty, but also if you're an alumnus and you'd like to come and join us, then please do feel free. Just let us know in advance so that we can make sure that we've ordered enough food. But also, we know that throughout your time with us, the personal and professional development module that's led by Professor Kirkup is a really popular and very valued experience. So we've decided to open that also to alumni. Now, we will require you to book because we need to know how many people and where to make sure we've got enough seats and chairs in the classrooms. But these are the sessions for this semester, and so you can see that we've got a number of really interesting, and then one quite not so interesting with a crazy woman, sort of the second one in. But we have got some really good MBA sessions, and just while we were outside and we were sort of taking in the air, a few people said, I came to that session with Bill Faust talking about careers. I'd really like to come back to another one of those. Well, you have the opportunity in December to do that. I know a number of you, particularly sort of spurred on from today's session, might be thinking about more ethical and sustainable issues and how they translate to the work that you do, both within your MBA and beyond the MBA. So there are a whole host of sessions. Just do please book via Eventbrite to let us know that you're coming. And I always think the start of the year is also a very nice time to say thank you, because last year I was absolutely overwhelmed by the support that we had from our alumni. As many of you should know, we are redesigning, we're redeveloping what we like to call the sort of the next generation MBA. So nothing ever stays the same. We always need to regenerate and find new and exciting ways of making sure that the MBA is really meeting the needs of employers and meeting the needs of you guys. So we are redesigning. A number of you have helped. We're almost at the point of going for our validation. So many of the comments and suggestions that you've made, and many of you have reviewed various aspects, have all been integrated, and we've sort of been thinking about those as we've designed the programme. We're happy to talk to you about them in more detail, but we'll unveil them in much more detail once we've gone through the process. And I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too soon, but we've got some very nice, exciting developments happening. The other point that I would really like to thank people for is that assistance and help with recruitment events. I don't know how many of our brand new September starters have actually spoken with any of our existing MBAs or our alumni, but I know that that's always a source of real interest. So being able to talk to somebody who's actually done the programme, who hasn't just taught the programme or has taken people through the programme, is really very popular. So a big thank you to everybody that helped with those events last year. And just as a kind of little plead, really, there are some other dates for online sessions, and if you would like to hone your online webinar skills, I know that Simon and I are always very grateful when we have a current participating member of the MBA and an alumnus. So those are dates, plus we've got also fairs to attend for QS and online fairs for Amber. Sorry, I've moved. There are, unfortunately, sometimes sad news stories to share. And last year, when I joined the MBA, I was absolutely privileged to attend a Westminster talk session that it was absolutely inspirational. For me coming into the MBA, I think it was wonderful to hear from Kirkup Patel. Many of you I know have looked at the videos, many that he prepared for us while he was delivering the Westminster talk. Many of you I know have read the boards, particularly during orientation recently. He was one of the alumni that was really singled out as a source of inspiration. But it's really regrettable that we have to share that during the summer, some of you may already know, but he sadly passed away. We are collecting thoughts and memories that we can share with his family, and we will over the time be writing our own MBA sort of tribute to him. So if anybody does have anything that they'd like to share, then please do come and speak with us. And of course we have Neil here this evening, who was the MBA director when Kirkup was studying with us, and we have a number of people who may have known him along the times as in the alumni network. So please do feel free to have a chat. In terms of alumni who are coming back and talking, particularly at Westminster talks, I I was delighted a few months ago to meet Sir Anthony Selden, who's the Vice Chancellor of Buckingham University. I popped down there, it's just literally a hop and the skip from where I live. Sir Anthony is an MBA, Westminster MBA alumnus, and so he will be coming to deliver a Westminster Talks session in March. So, as you know, the Westminster Talks sessions are very valuable. They're always full of good speakers, but I'd really strongly recommend that you do try and come along and support those where we have our own MBAs there. And a good news story. We heard very recently, I think on the 30th of September, we heard that we actually have a celebrity as well within our alumni circles. So if, like me, when you go through Marylebone Station and you see the posters for Aladdin everywhere that we're bound to see in the run-up to Christmas, it's actually one of our MBA alumni who is playing Sultan. So if you go along, you might want to, instead of say boo and hiss, you might want to hold up a yay Westminster MBA sign or something. And I think, you know, really we talk a lot about being agile. We heard from Vicky Harmer and a whole host of different alumni last year about how they've been agile. I think being able to magic a genie out of a lamp is probably, or being a genie or whatever the Sultan does, is a pretty good way of being agile. And finally, before I hand over to Malcolm, just some other dates. So I've whizzed through a number of dates there. We can send you this list anyway to refer to later. But just some other dates on top of the personal and professional development and recruitment fairs. We do host within the school the chairman's debate, and we very much welcome the support of our MBA and our alumni. I think it's something that is always a nice opportunity to come and hear what's happening. And this particular topic, looking at why some companies fail and others succeed, is a really, really, obviously very, very intriguing and topical and relevant subject. So please do feel that you can come along and participate in that. And we have a whole series of MBA Tuesdays lined up for this year. But the next one, just to flag up for the next one, is the 29th of November, and we'll be joined by long-standing alumnus Arthur Weiss, who is talking about competitive intelligence. Now that's really, I can imagine it's going to be absolutely fascinating, because when I've ever met with Arthur, some of the inspirational stories and top secret, almost spy-like stories that he tells in relation to finding out what your competitors do should be very, very good. So that's enough from me. Now you're all settled back in your seats, I would like to hand over to Professor Malcolm Kirkup.
Good evening. Well, according to the schedule, I've now got 5 minutes. So I'm not going to manage it in that time, but I will certainly try and speed up so that we don't invade too much of the time for networking at the end. But thank you very much, Kelly, for that welcome. So I started here 1st of September and delighted to be joining an institution that teaches professionally relevant stuff, contemporary stuff, practical stuff, applied stuff. I've worked my way around the country in my career and been at some institutions that don't know what real is, don't know what contemporary is, don't know what applied is. And I'm delighted to actually come and contribute to the continued development and success of Westminster as an institution that is certainly known for its professional and applied education. So that's I'm delighted to be here as Dean. But of course, the very, very first thing I did on my first day was, in fact, before my first day over the summer, was spoke to Kelly about the MBA. I've been involved in a number of MBA programs in my time. So I have managed the Lancaster MBA, followed by the MBA at Birmingham, which was an MBA in International Business, and the MBA Global Finance, Banking and Finance degree. I then got somewhat disillusioned with the way MBAs were being taught and the core messages of MBAs, and which essentially, and many MBAs still push profit, 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 short term, short term, short term. And I reacted rather to that and went down to Exeter and set up the One Planet MBA in association with WWF and 10 corporates to build a sustainable MBA in sustainable business, which has been hugely successful and is certainly rewriting the rules around around business. A particularly successful program because of the relationship between both NGOs and corporates. That was a really unique combination. And some of that is reflected in my talk tonight. And I'll say a little bit more about leadership in this context in a second. But then I'm very target driven as an individual, and having achieved the #1 spot in the sustainable business programs globally, after 3.5 years, I moved on to Edinburgh to reposition their MBA, which has also been really successful. So the first thing I was curious about when I came here is what's Westminster doing in terms of its MBA, and it will be no surprise that there will be changes coming, and Kelly's developed a fantastic set of initiatives which are coming through, and I'll certainly be adding and enhancing that. It's extremely exciting what we've got planned, and the university is investing substantially in that future, so the MBA will certainly be going places. And there'll be some experimenting with our new plans during the course of this year, so current students will get the benefit of that as well. So just sort of by way of introduction, I do believe many MBAs are still not quite on message in terms of the role, the purpose of business. And what I want to dwell on tonight is to first of all look at a few statements about why I think that to be the case, and then just to pick one very small aspect of sustainable business to focus on. Where there's waste, there's money. Now, the agenda essentially is briefly looking at the VUCA context, theory of the circular economy, before then turning to some practical business applications of circular economy and the lessons for business leaders, and particularly for MBAs who are aspiring for board director positions. Now, to start with the VUCA context, everyone familiar with VUCA? Put up your hands if you know what VUCA stands for. Okay. Right, VUCA. Okay, I'll explain in a second. So, if you don't know about VUCA and you are aspiring to be a director of a company over the next 5 to 10 years, then you need to start reading about VUCA. You may know it in a different context. VUCA stands for a volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous environment, which if we're not already in that, we are heading rapidly towards it. And when I've been involved in MBA programs, I've asked the question, how is this MBA program preparing leaders to lead in a volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous environment? So not just are we developing the knowledge in finance and accounting and marketing and strategy and international business, not just the skills, interpersonal skills and building confidence and the ability to have impact around a boardroom table, but more than that, how are we building adaptability, how are we building resilience, how are we building the capability for responding to constant change and quite dramatic change. And literally over the last 2 to 3 months, of course, we're experiencing that here in this country with Brexit and its potential implications. And almost every day there's some revelation that's going to impact on business leadership. So I want to say something about that, and then something about the theory of the circular economy. How many are familiar with circular economy? A few. Good. And then some business models that arise from the use of waste. And by the way, I mentioned the One Planet MBA, I mentioned sustainable business, but I am not green. I am absolutely not green. I believe sustainable business, if you want a colour, is blue, because sustainable business is about opportunity as much as it is about conservation or protecting the environment or saving on resources. And that really is in what's behind the title, really, that if we take a different perspective on something that's been just taken for granted, waste is regarded, has always been regarded as a natural output from a production process and a sales process and a distribution sales process. You always end up with something at the end. And the essential subtext of this talk is actually there's no such thing as waste. If you look at it in a particular way or manage it in a particular way, there is no such thing. Every single consequence or output from a production process or from any sales process, you can still do something with the end product, the byproducts, and in fact you can make very successful businesses out of waste. So if I can eradicate waste from your vocabulary tonight, that will be an achievement. So moving swiftly on. So Fuka, if you haven't heard of this before, it's essentially a descriptor for the environment we're in, and we're heading rapidly towards more extreme VUCA environments. And basically it's a summary of the increasing rate of change, the complexity of factors that are involved. There are no right answers, huge uncertainty as a result of the multiplicity of decision factors, and a lot less clarity about the future. We've seen that with Brexit. No one really knows what's going to happen. The markets are all over the place trying to second guess what the impact might be. And as MBA graduates and MBA students, we need to be thinking, how are we preparing those graduates for this environment? Let's just put some flavour on that. So there are 4 types of environment in which we operate as businesses and business leaders. Internal market environment, the immediate environment in which our competitors and we exist, the wider economic environment, and the natural environment. And just in terms of internal, if we apply the sort of VUCA thinking, we've got constant focus on cost reduction, particularly as the economy slows, constant pursuit of improvement, continuous improvement, constant and increasing regulation and the requirement to comply with certain ways of doing things. And of course, even when we have CSR writ large over all businesses who claim to follow CSR policies, we still have huge catastrophes, as we saw in Volkswagen. So even within our own business, internal business environment, things happen constantly. In the market environment, well, digital disruption, of course, is huge. Digital is affecting every single facet of the business. And because digital is moving so quickly, the impacts are hitting quick. So these points are the most obvious manifestation of the impact of digital. The world's largest taxi company owns no taxis. The largest accommodation provider owns no real estate, Airbnb. The largest phone companies own no telecoms infrastructure. The world's most valuable retailer has no inventory, Alibaba. The most popular media owner creates no content. The world's largest movie house owns no cinemas. That's as a consequence of digital. Digital is reaping havoc with our market environment. In terms of positives, of course, we've got fantastic developments in renewable energy. The connectivity of social media is leading to all sorts of new business opportunities. Big data is hugely underexploited. The opportunities for business out of analysing and using predictive analytics to learn from data that we can access. And amazing technology in health sciences. This is a contact lens which has a device built in that can be useful for diabetes sufferers to measure the glucose level in blood through tears rather than having to rely on other mechanisms. Fantastic technologies which are becoming available to give us new products and new opportunities. In the economic environment, well, that could be as a result of Theresa May's speech this week. We've got issues in many, many countries in different parts of the world where unrest is impacting on local economies and local market opportunities, and we've got Brexit. And then we have, if that's not enough, we have changes and developments in the natural environment. And that's what I wanted to dwell on. all of these, and the lightning strikes are deliberate and that background, because these things are hitting businesses constantly, and business leaders of the future need to be able to deal with the positive opportunities that are created through this, but also deal responsibly with the threats and the implications of this. And this is why adaptability and resilience is so key in business leadership today. But I don't know if you've ever taken time out to think about what is happening in the world in terms of the natural environment, but just in terms of linking population to the environment, the population of this wonderful planet on which we live is growing like crazy. I wouldn't take too much, leave too much in the slight tail off at the end. It's still uncomfortably rapid increase in population since effectively 1800. But because this is so important to the later part of my talk, I just wanted to show a video, but just, I don't know if you've seen this particular website that rather brings home population growth. Let's get rid of the adverts. If you want some sobering statistics on world population, just sit and watch this for a few minutes, and this will depress you. This is the actual increase in population in real time as we sit here and as we watch it going up. And by the end of this particular session, probably in about 20-25 minutes, the population of the world would have increased by something like 35,000. It's quite scary stuff, and that top figure takes into account deaths as well. So that's pretty scary. So actually the population of the world is increasing at this pace. That's a new baby. That's another mobile phone. That's another car per family eventually. That's pretty scary stuff. Now, the problem is we've got this sort of growth, and yet we live on something called a planet which is not growing. And that's essentially the problem. But let me just bring it home even more. I don't know whether I can switch the lights out for this. Let's just, in view of the time, I'll cut to the chase. Now what this is a pictorial representation of the growth of population on the planet. And each of those yellow dots represents a population of 1 million, so a concentration of 1 million people. And the simulation takes us through history, and you'll see the historical period down the bottom, 1 CE, the Han Dynasty. And let's just, if we can put the lights right down, that'd be really good. Let's just get the... So every yellow dot is the addition of another 1 million people. Notice we lost a few there. $1 billion. $2 billion. So that's the reality of what's happening and the speed of what's happening. And the problem is that we live on something which is a finite resource. We live on a planet that has a finite amount of water, that has a finite amount of land, that has finite resources. The problem is, this is the consumption of a family of four. This is a slide from Germany. For an average week. If everyone in developing countries who aspires to consume in the same way as developed economies, then that level of consumption is simply not sustainable. From a point of view of energy consumption, it's going through the roof. Water is running out. Less than 1% of the world's water is actually drinkable. There are some parts of the world now where water insecurity or water scarcity is causing wars. The impact of water scarcity across these areas of the globe are suffering significant water shortages already. I went to India in April, and there were riots in Pune, one of the largest cities there, because the water was running out. What was happening is they were going into the hotels, people were pinching the water from the hotels, taking the water, the good quality water, refilling the bottles, taking them back into their hotels, putting nail varnish around the cap on the bottle so that it clicks when you open it. Because water is so precious and the quality of water varies so much, they'll go to extreme measures to get the best quality water they can. Food insecurity. Fish stocks are running out in key parts of the world. Certain minerals, rare earths, are becoming difficult to get. The mobile phones are dependent on minerals such as coltan, which is available from very few countries, mainly the Congo Basin and China. And if those resources run out, where do we get the minerals we require for lithium batteries? Climate change, of course, so much is said about climate change, I won't dwell on that, but of course the implications of climate change are dramatic changes in the productivity of land in different parts of the world. And natural catastrophes seem to be increasing. So whether that's better measurement or other natural factors, but that's a fact. And we have self-inflicted problems as well, when we don't manage effectively and cause widespread pollution or widespread waste. This is the Pacific garbage patch, an area of the Pacific which has this much waste floating on the surface, the size of Texas. In fact, there's two of them on the two extreme ends of the Pacific Ocean. Our waste, plastic waste, flowing in the ocean, an area the size of Texas. And of course, poverty. And the problem for us, the problem which businesses need to contribute to and think about, is that we have this finite resource. And if the population carries on growing to 2050, which is predicted, if levels of consumption, if developing countries aspire to the same levels of consumption as we have in this country, then we actually need more than one planet to maintain that level of consumption. And as far as I'm aware, there isn't another one. But we could do with one. Unfortunately, there isn't. So, what do we have to do, and what do businesses have to do? We have to manage our resources far better. We have to reverse, we have to manage sustainably, and we have to try in some way to develop an environment where our children and grandchildren can have the same level of access to resources that we have been enjoying. And business has a massive role to play in that. And it is my contention that relatively few MBA programs that develop leaders of the future are really taking this seriously and really dwelling sufficiently on how on earth do you deal with some of these issues, and what's the role of business in dealing with these issues. And just briefly, some concepts which are becoming more prominent in the teaching on MBAs, fortunately. Firstly, this concept of shared value. Let's not just talk about shareholders anymore, let's talk about real shared value. So that is sharing the benefits that companies generate in terms of resources and impact with all the communities that we serve, not just the shareholders, but the communities, the customers, the suppliers, and the bigger community and the society around businesses that gives them the license to operate. So we need to develop strategy which creates measurable business value by addressing social and environmental problems at the same time as the generating financial profitability. I see leadership as stewardship. Ultimately, we're all on this earth for a relatively short period of time. We manage companies for an even shorter period of time. And I believe the role of business leaders is actually to be stewards. Stewards of financial capital, yes, but also stewards of social and natural capital. So to look after these resources in a way that's sustainable and leaves surplus for future generations. So stakeholders, not shareholders. And another key principle is this idea of circular economy, which I wanted to focus on. And essentially, I'd need 6 hours to really go into this in sufficient depth, but I believe very strongly that companies, good companies operating responsibly, companies operating sustainably can contribute both good, healthy profits as well as significant benefits for the communities that they serve. And companies will have a better, brighter future if they think more about the societies and communities that they serve. So the particular aspect I wanted to pick up was the circular economy. And this is just an example of how the traditional teaching of subjects like economics needs to be rethought. So in the typical assumption of the way production works is you take resources out of the ground or from a particular source, you produce something, you distribute it, the product then gets consumed, and when you're finished with it, you're fed up with it, you throw it away. And that throwing away means putting it in a bin. That bin goes to the tidy tip, the household waste site, and you're done, you're finished. You don't care about it anymore. You've had the use of it, you discard it. The principle of the circular economy basically says there is no such thing as waste. If we went back to the beginnings of life and thought about how nature deals with waste, there is no waste. When a plant dies, it becomes compost for a future plant. There's a natural cycle, and the circular economy says let's get this natural cycle embedded into business life as well, so that waste is not seen as waste but is seen as a byproduct of a process, and that waste actually can be extremely valuable to either your own business or another business if it's put to a different use. So, and my argument, and this is why I believe sustainable business should be blue and not green, is that there are significant opportunities to continue to make money, to develop a sustainable, profitable business by taking a very proactive view of waste. So what I want to do is just work around this circle briefly and illustrate some of the ways in which waste can be profitable, and just illustrate some of the absurdities of the world in which we live. So if we take production, for example, we take food, we waste an enormous amount of food. 2.3 million tonnes of fish is discarded in the North Atlantic and the North Sea each year because it is picked up by ships that exceed their quota and they have to dump them. Sorry, 40 to 60% of all fish caught in Europe is discarded for that reason. It's either the wrong size for the supermarkets, the species that are caught aren't the ones that they have the quota for, or they catch too much beyond their quota, so they're dumped. 20 to 40% of UK fruit and vegetables are rejected before they even reach the shops because they are the wrong size, the wrong shape, or the wrong colour to meet the supermarket's exacting standards of cosmetics, what a tomato ought to look like, what a banana ought to look like. UK households then waste 22% of all food purchased by having the syndrome of their head was bigger than their stomach, serving up too much food and not eating it. This wasted food, to generate this wasted food, consumes in the process 3.3 billion tonnes of CO2 and uses 1.4 billion hectares of land to produce the food that is then wasted. So, where's the business opportunity? Well, it's screaming at you. The first, fortunately, some supermarkets are recognising that that old problem is still a problem for many supermarkets of a misshaped tomato is actually, could be, Asda have spotted that wonky veg boxes are a marketing opportunity. So increased revenue can come from actually retaining more of the harvest rather than insisting on perfectly shaped vegetables. So a simple example. One can create a social enterprise on the back of this waste problem. So Fair Share, fantastic organisation that goes around supermarkets taking all the food that has not been sold by its sell-by date and or on its sell-by date, taking food that's still edible and redistributing it to charities and to others that are willing, in some cases, to buy it. One fascinating example of this is again a social enterprise where the profits generated by this business go to feed back the charity. So this is an organisation, Toast, that takes the waste bread produced by, again, left by supermarkets and bakers, not used, and reprocesses that bread into croutons and produces beer on the back of waste bread. Very successful brand now, started collaborating with Hackney Brewery in London and now others in other parts of the country. But a totally waste product that would normally go in bins and then off to landfill or to be processed in some other way, but now being used for a social enterprise, successful social enterprise, which is employing people and therefore clearly making money. And then if you want to convert that into a profit-based business, then a very fascinating example is rubies in the rubble. And this is just a very short video to show you.
In 2010, I left my job to start something I really cared about. There are more than 1 billion people in our world going hungry, yet in the UK, we waste 16 million tonnes of food every year. 1 in 5 children in London live in workless households. These facts got me thinking. There must be something that I could do with all this unnecessary excess, and there must be some way of providing jobs and getting people back onto the employment ladder. The solution was simple: to make first-class products from some of our excess, some of the fruit and veg that would otherwise go to waste. I called it Rubies in the Rubble, and it started with chutney. With the help of the local community and old family recipes, we started making chutney in local kitchens and selling them on weekend markets. And it grew from there. Turns out, we're pretty darn good at making chutney. Now we're at Borough Market, high-end delis, we've been written up about in the media, and the City of London is helping us to set up our very own kitchen. At this one market, there's 250 tonnes wasted each week. That's a lot of chutney and a lot of jobs to be created. And we're not going to stop there. There's so many products to make. To you, this might just be a jar of chutney, but to me, it's a solution. These products are powerful examples of the innate beauty in so much of what our society discards, and a way of empowering people in the most impoverished areas of our city. It doesn't just taste good, it is good.
And look at their customers. So waste product to profitable business, serving the best in the market. So social enterprise, profitable enterprise from waste. Let's move on. If we come down to consumption, of course, yes, the purpose is we consume what we buy. But if we take a different look at waste and see waste also in terms of how can we not buy quite so many products so we don't waste them in the first place, then this brings us into the collaborative economy. And essentially the collaborative economy is all about saving waste, sharing together, sharing resources, and building businesses around collaboration. And you only have to look at, so what's around here are organisations that share goods, share food, share services, share transportation, share space, and any opportunity where consumers get together and actually share products or avoid more products being produced is an opportunity to save waste. And just some examples there, some new ones that you may not be familiar with. You're all, I'm sure, very familiar with Airbnb, which is essentially sharing wasted space. Someone's got a spare room and it's lying idle and no one's occupying it. Why not make use of that particular space? Take Airbnb one step further, and now you can offer your home as an office space. So here we have companies selling £21 per person per day to sit in their front room with a computer using their internet to have as an office environment. And this is being done now on a huge scale, particularly in London, where startups, particularly startups, tech startups, are borrowing someone's home for an office for a day or for a week or for 6 months. A fantastic opportunity, a fantastic example of reducing waste. Rather than selling bags, borrowing bags. So rather than encouraging the sale of yet more and more and more bags that are then discarded, well, at the high end of the market, pay £200 for a week's rental of a Louis Vuitton bag. Moving around, there's the obvious examples of reusing products and repairing products, but another good example of reducing waste is this whole concept of remanufacturing. So, and Canon is a really good example of this, where when a photocopier reaches the end of its first phase of life, they will take the photocopier back. They will reuse 91.1% of the parts in essentially taking it apart, cleaning it completely. They do this in a factory in Gießen in Germany. They have it off to an absolute fine art. They break the machine down, they clean every single part. They can use 91.1% again just as it's new. There's no less quality in the remanufactured version. All they need to change are some key components, and they recycle and sell, of course, what they are discarding in terms of plastics, iron, glass and toner. But they can produce an almost identical product from an older one with relatively small changes. So remanufacturing, a fantastic way of reducing waste. And this is a Dutch company, Deso, which, rather than talking about circular economy, talks about cradle to cradle. So the idea of taking a product from its original constitution, using it for a particular product, and then taking it back to its original form, and then remanufacturing products again. So Deso is a carpet tile manufacturer that has perfected the art of taking back an old carpet tile and separating the yarn from the bitumen backing so well that they can reproduce a new carpet tile almost 100% from the old material. And they are working towards a fantastically interesting business model, which is, if you can do this to perfection, you make a carpet tile, you get a business to buy it in large quantities, and you are so confident about your recycling process at the end that you want it back. Why sell it in the first place? Why not lease the carpet so that you get it back, so that you produce the new products on the back of that? And servitizing products is another really good example of the way forward, so that you don't own the product, you lease it, and if the company's really has perfected the recycling to make use of the old products, then it's a good business opportunity. Now, the best example, and one I wanted to finish on, is a company I'm a particular fan of because I think they do everything all wrapped into one. Who's heard of Elvis and Kresse? Great. This is a lovely company based down on the south coast in Dorset, and two individuals set the company up originally, and they were absolutely distraught about the whole concept of things going to landfill. And there's one particular product they found that there's really not a lot you can do with. It doesn't break down naturally, and that is fire hose. And what they did when they first started out was they took all of the fire hose that was decommissioned from the London Fire Brigade, and they're still buying it as it becomes unusable. They take the fire hose and they repurpose, or upcycle rather than recycle, they repurpose the fire hose into luxury fashion accessories, women's handbags, men's belts, that compete on the market at the same price points as some of the top luxury brands. So they take that product, that waste, which costs practically zero in the production process, they repurpose it, they combine it with other waste products, parachute silk, the linings for the bags, printing blankets, leather offcuts. When leather is produced, it has all those jagged edges. They take all of that waste and use that in the product. Coffee sacks, shoe boxes for packaging, tea sacks, auction banners, a whole range of waste products, and produce on the back of it pretty okay looking products. Now, the really interesting thing that they do from a marketing point of view is that they're getting this margin, they're getting these prices from the narrative, from the added value around the story, from the heritage. Whenever they produce a bag that has a code, a serial code, or words on it, guess what? The price is higher, because that endorses the authenticity of the product. It gives more value to the product. Marketing is all about creating and adding value, and they do it phenomenally well to take a product and actually build the value around the fact that it's a sturdy material, it provides the function, but it's the story that's of interest. They call it, the concept is beyond luxury. Normally you buy a handbag, a branded handbag like Louis Vuitton, in order to show it off. That's the point. the brand name is big, huge on the front. That's luxury. That's one type of luxury. Conspicuous consumption. You buy the product in order to show it off to your friends and be seen to be walking down the street with your Louis Vuitton. I hope no one's got one here. What Elvis and Kresse do is actually the luxury. They're paying similar prices, but the luxury is in here. It's the ability to say, do you know what, I have a very expensive, but I bought it because I want to protect the environment, I want to contribute, I believe in the cause that this organisation is promoting. But I know about it, I'm happy that it's just me, it's not something I parade. But they're very successful. It's a fantastic example of taking something of no value whatsoever, a discarded fire hose that will never decompose, never break down, it can only go to landfill, and yet converting high-end accessories at considerable profit margins. The other part of the story is 50% of their profits go to the fire service charity. So the narrative is superb. The very last example is, and again, this is about a profitable business from waste. Who's heard of industrial symbiosis? Okay, a few. So this is an organisation in Kalundborg in Denmark. They've taken waste to the extreme. They've looked at the waste output of companies to see what is waste for one company versus what is waste in another company. And they've cleverly rethought, using the circular economy principle, they cleverly rethought, if looking at the inputs for a company, what does the company need to produce something? If that matches the waste output of another company, then you co-locate the two organisations next to each other, so that the waste from one, let's say hot water is a waste output from one business, but another business requires hot water as an input. Join the two together, co-locate, and you've got a huge saving. It's just a short video again.
The world has to learn new ways of working together in order to solve the challenges we face in the 21st century. Challenges like water consumption, waste management, and the use of materials. If we can come up with new, intelligent ways of cooperating, new opportunities can be created that further economic growth, reduce our consumption of natural resources, and help to save the environment. The enterprises and authorities of Kalundborg, a city right in the heart of Denmark, are at the forefront of conceiving clever, cooperative solutions for these problems. Centres of some of Denmark's largest industries are situated in Kalundborg. Among others, the world's largest producer of insulin, the world's biggest enzyme producer, the largest water treatment plant in Northern Europe, and the world's first second-generation bioethanol demonstration facility, a project affiliated with the Dong Energy Power Plant in Kalundborg. The enterprises of Kalundborg have come together in a collaboration aimed at organising in order to utilise each other's waste products in a rotating local cycle. By creating a closed cycle of waste products between enterprises and authorities, a unique system has been created. Here, residue and byproducts flow in a minutely orchestrated system of production, where the byproduct of one company is the raw material of another company. Through this cooperation, the enterprises achieve an economic advantage, since all agreements in the symbiosis are based on sound business as well as environmental principles. Through millions of years of evolution, nature has created similar systems. In nature, there is no such thing as garbage. All output becomes input in a different part of the natural ecosystem. In this way, a falling leaf becomes part of the soil. The same principle is applied in the Kalundborg symbiosis. If other local communities are willing to learn from the experiences of the Kalundborg symbiosis.
So, yet another illustration of how waste is a revenue saver, or at least profit enhancer. So those are my examples briefly, but the key point, and I've rushed a little bit, but the key point is that the scary stuff at the beginning, where the limited finite planet is rapidly running out of resources because of this huge indulgence in satisfying everything that everyone wants, meeting all of our cravings for novelty and lots of new products. We have a problem that cannot continue. But there are ways in which business can respond, and in the process, business opportunities from some of these byproducts. Now, just to finish on my particular view of where the MBA sits in this in terms of a qualification, I think some MBAs are moving towards the redesigning in a way that provides leadership for this VUCA world. But what needs to change, and what some programs are starting to look at, is a far more interdisciplinary approach to the MBA design. So leaders of the future are those who are effectively adaptable, flexible, driven and resilient, because we can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen in 3 months or 6 months' time. And yet MBA graduates are going out into the market in order to be able to manage that uncertainty and complexity. So you can't learn a huge amount on an MBA program that prepares you perfectly for that first day in the office when everything could change. So what we need is a multiplicity of capabilities. So long-term vision, dynamic competencies that can change, the ability to build talent rather than thinking just people, thinking talent, utilising technology, building financial controls, yes, but being entrepreneurial, being innovative and creative, being global, being collaborative, not competitive, and being responsible. And I believe really strongly that the MBAs that are really making progress are those that are taking this really seriously, and employers are increasingly looking at this ability for MBA graduates and other types of graduate to actually operate in this hugely complex and rapidly changing world.